There's a woman, she works at a strip club. She's trying to get more clients, so she gets butt implants. She gets her butt inflated. She goes, she's on stage, she's performing. There's a man in the audience with a hook hand.
Oh, God. I didn't expect, I knew what was gonna happen.
Hello and welcome back to Staff Picks, the show where we are building our dream video rental store. I'm Patrick Willems, joined as always by my co-host, Danielle Radford. And today with us we have Jordan Searles and Jordan Olds. We're here today in Brooklyn, New York at Film Noir Cinema, one of New York City's last remaining video rental stores, also a working movie theater. It's a very cool place.
Because we are still in solidarity with the WGA and the SAG strikes, we're not going to be covering any movies that would be struck films. We're going to be doing independent movies, which brings us to Best Indie Movie Debuts. And for our first movie, let's go ahead and kick it on over to Jordan.
She's Gotta Have It, directed by Spike Lee.
Wow.
I don't even know.
It's the first Spike Lee joint.
Technically a second movie, but his first movie was made at NYU. So She's Gotta Have It is Spike Lee's approximation of the sexually adventurous Black woman of the 80s. She's like sleeping with 3 different men and she won't commit to them, and that's the conflict. Her name is Nola Darling, which is a great name, one of my favorite names in cinema. And she's just like very specific. She's just like, I will sleep with you in my apartment. I like my bed. Her bed is like this like beautiful thing. She's got like candles around it. She's like, I'll have sex with all of you, but I will not be your romantic partner. And it's like the men kind of dealing with that. And there's like a very bougie one. Then there's Spike, who plays like the very like Brooklyn one. You know, he's very into sneakers, rides a bike, all of those things. And then there is the romantic one, the one that seems like most likely to be the romantic partner, Jamie. And between all these 3, she can't choose. And it's kind of just like looking into like the psychology of like, why would a woman be sleeping with 3 different men? It's crazy.
She doesn't want a wife. She's wearing shoulder pads.
It's very much a movie of a man trying to understand something, and he still really doesn't understand. By the end. You gotta say, it's weird to suggest this movie because it's a very important movie, but it's also a movie that's like based on a premise that's kind of stupid, which is like, why would a woman sleep with 3 different, very annoying people and not commit to them? I don't know. Maybe because they're annoying.
And Spike Lee cared so much about this idea that he's like, decades later, I now have to make a TV show out of it.
Well, the problem with the show is that, like, in a lot of ways, it's a little bit more thoughtful than the movie, but I actually, maybe this is controversial, prefer the movie to the show. Even with the issues that are in the movie, I think the issues in the show are kind of worse. There's a scene in the show that has, like, scarred me for life. There's a woman, she works at a strip club. She's trying to get more clients, so she gets butt implants. She gets her butt inflated. She goes, she's on stage, she's performing. There's a man in the audience with a hook hand.
Oh, God. I didn't expect, I knew what was gonna happen.
I have to hear the rest of this.
There's like, the thing about it is that like the ass does get popped and pieces of the ass do go flying.
So she is a mid-pole trick.
Yes!
And her butt implants open like the alien coming out of the stomach in Alien.
It's so crazy, because it's like a horror movie scene. I had to walk out of the room while I was watching it. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. The fact that people talk about that show and that's not the first thing that they mention.
Yeah, because
that an ass explodes on stage.
I'm calling it I Know What You Stripped Last Summer.
And it's
that
also
is
just
like the name of that movie
Is there
now.
a man with a prominent hook hand at the strip club holding it up like this?
I was gonna say, Spike Lee, come on Staff Picks. Let's talk about it.
I just want to understand why he did that.
I don't think we can top that part of the conversation. You know what? I'm gonna toss it on over to Jordan.
I picked El Mariachi for my best independent debut. The way in which this is an independent movie that has an impact, I think that it's very important. This movie was made for $7,000.
In like 90s money.
This is a miracle. Robert Rodriguez is like a human affliction t-shirt, but
I know that man smell like Axe.
Right? I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for a lot of filmmaking that has taken over blockbuster cinema. He's the precursor to a 300, to a whatever's going on.
Well, he literally did 300 2 years earlier with Sin City.
Totally.
So yeah.
I can imagine for a lot of different people, this makes it feel possible. This is the starting point for me, wanting to go to film school, discovering the real, I'm gonna make the best thing ever with almost nothing master, which is John Carpenter. There's a direct through line to his ethos. Honestly, it's a really fun movie. I rewatched it. It kind of holds up. It honestly looks like a movie where like Billy Joel is the protagonist and Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age is the bad guy. It has style elements that I like wish he put into his other movies, because he's got a very specific sense of humor in this movie that doesn't really show up in a lot of other stuff that I can remember. It's kind of the movie that will always be tied to him in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's a movie that I also think, because he wrote the book about how he made it, is so tied to just the public information about how it was made, that like he financed it by submitting himself for like medical trials that they like gave him money for. Like I remember so many things from that book so vividly.
Yeah.
And the two things that I think are worth highlighting are that his goal with the movie was not for El Mariachi to become a big splash and like get a lot of attention. His goal was like, I'm gonna make a movie that'll like be like a bargain video rental like in Mexico, and then maybe I'll get, I don't know, $15,000 to make the next one.
Right.
And so his plan was just to like kind of take advantage of like this new market to make cheap movies and sell it to them. And then it ended up like, you know, like blowing up at like Sundance or whatever, and then getting him like a Hollywood deal. The other thing, his ethos was look at what you already have and then figure out how to use it. And he's like, ooh, I got a guitar case. That's a cool prop. We'll make a movie around that. Or he's like, okay, we're gonna have shootouts and we're gonna put blanks in these Uzis and automatic guns, but they'll only fire one blank at a time. We'll shoot one gunshot, and then I'll just immediately cut away to guys getting shot to make it look like it's actually like shooting a stream of bullets. And just like, that's cool. That is
It's
like
so cool.
It's like the movie itself is like pretty fun. The story behind it is like the greatest story in the world.
Yeah. Sometimes when you do have money, it becomes very easy to just throw money at the problem, and great shots like that are things that we don't get if you don't have to combine creator with these budgetary restrictions.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking significant indie debut features. And so I have brought with me George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. This basically created the zombie subgenre of horror. This was a really low budget movie made by a guy starting out in the 60s, and it spawned hundreds and hundreds of things that have come since. And fundamentally what this gets down to is he cracked something like so simple that like resonates with basically everybody. It's a scary thing. A big horde of like lumbering undead things coming to rip you apart is scary. In a way, I guess the knock against this movie is you can blame it for being like, I'm so goddamn sick of zombies. They're in everything all the time. But it's like, the movie genuinely holds up. It's shockingly progressive in many ways. You know, I don't want to give away the ending, but I think the ending is one of the things that makes the movie so good. Basically every zombie thing that has come along in the 60 years since Romero made this are using the material that he originally presented.
He
And,
literally uses rule, like he
Yeah, it's a
wasn't
whole
intending
mythos.
to.
Yeah.
He made the rules and everything about like, oh, people trapped inside a house and boarding up windows and all of that, and like removing the head or destroying the brain. Like it all just comes back to like this one thing. And so like, you know, that's why I have to submit it, because it is so foundational to just like modern media and film.
Yeah, it's literally like someone's first like movie out is them creating an entire mythos.
So in a way, he kind of pulled an Orson Welles a little bit, which is like, okay, my first movie, I'm gonna make something so towering that like everything I ever make after that will kind of be looked at as a disappointment. Both of them made great movies after that, but it's like the first one cast a shadow over everything else they ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so that's me, and Night of the Living Dead.
For my pick, I'm going with yet another incredibly esteemed independent filmmaker. Came from nothing. Who knows? Because he's such a mystery. We don't know from where he came from, whence he came, where he got his money. Why are you laughing at this brilliant man? All we know about him is that he was able to get together a group of fantastic performers, amazing crew, and put together one of the best cult movies that has ever been. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Tommy Wiseau's The Room.
Oh, hi, Mark.
First of all, let's get into it. Let's get into how iconic this thing was on every billboard in Los Angeles. Tommy Wiseau was a man with a dream, and that dream was to make the talented Mr. Ripley. But he couldn't, because someone already had. So instead, Tommy Wiseau got together with his bestie that he met at acting camp or whatever, and like 20 pounds of black hair dye, and made this movie, which he wrote. He did everything. He was a true auteur. Aside from, obviously, yes, we know what The Room is. We're not going to pretend we don't understand. The Room might not be for you. It's not the perfect movie.
I don't know. I think The Room has something for everyone.
I think it does as well.
Yeah.
It's got a room.
It has lessons about.
It's got some soft core scenes.
It's got a lot of soft core.
It's got sex. It's
questionable
got
pop music.
It's got teens getting in trouble with drugs.
It's got athletics.
One of the most important and enduring and lasting legacies of The Room is, and I 100% believe this, The Room is another movie that did teach people, I can do this.
Yes.
Sure did.
And it also taught bad lessons, because I believe that you can all make movies. I can't stop you because of the popularity of it, and it's kind of Rocky Horror-esque style late night shows in Los Angeles. This reads like sarcasm. It's not. This was a real phenomena. You don't get a snakes on the plane. That was an example of the studios learning the wrong lesson, which is that they were trying to make something as cringe as The Room. I think there's a way to make a movie like this. I think it does not work if you put in that thing of like, oh, I'm gonna do something purposefully wacky and cringy because I want it to get popular. Like, that doesn't work. There has to be sincerity. There has to be people who care. This movie launched a lot of very similar kinds of movies and allowed for people to have a career instead of this like B movie resurgence that started coming around in the 2000s.
I've watched The Room so many times in my life, and I mean, when talking about the sincerity, that really is the key to it. I mean, this is a movie made by and starring the weirdest human being on the planet, who doesn't know how to make a movie, who
also doesn't know that he's weird.
No, but he thinks he's John Cassavetes.
You 1,000%.
I imagine that like that San Francisco thing was like proto The Volume, you know, like just get in there.
ILM was watching The Room being like, yes,
Yeah.
this is the future.
Right.
It is well, and this is why I think that should be what goes up in our store.
I think that is a really compelling case for that movie. Folks, it's time for us to decide what makes it to the shelf. Does anyone have any strong opinions about this? Because I think we have 4 solid candidates.
Yeah.
Can I vote for The Room without it just being chaos?
I feel like the question here is, do we vote for movies that are like important in cinematic history in terms of like introducing and establishing major creative voices? Or do we vote for one that is objectively funny to see on a wall of staff picks?
Man, see, with that, I do comedy, man. Like, those are the same argument to me. You just make the same argument twice.
It's the kind of thing, like, imagine going into a video store, looking at the staff picks wall, and seeing, like, Spirited Away and Perfect Blue and The Room.
Yeah, but
It
you're
is
kinda,
funny.
here's the thing. I love George A. Romero, and I made a case for El Mariachi, but I think that Rodriguez is also responsible for a lot of people going to film school who probably maybe shouldn't have. I have not seen She's Gotta Have It, but I think you dunked on that so hard. Like,
It's weird because I do like it. I'm
Right.
just like, I have to be honest about the big issue with it.
Also, to be clear,
Yeah.
We didn't want to spoil it. Yeah.
the butt bursting is not in the movie.
right,
No,
right, right,
I wish
right.
it was.
Yeah.
I love that we're just referring to it as butt bursting, like chest bursters.
It is interesting, like who's like inspired by Spike, because I read recently that Wes Anderson's really into Spike.
That
and
makes
it's
so
like,
much
Oh
sense.
my
It's like
God!
when you
Some
think
of those
about
state,
it-
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, like the way that he influences people, like creates like something completely different. Because I think his work is so personal to himself and so personal to New York that whenever anybody copies him, it's also like personal to wherever it is that they're coming from.
Totally.
My reason for saying I would stick with The Room is that I genuinely believe that in other arguments, any of these movies would still go up. I do think this is the only time, unless we very specifically did a very specific kind of show, that The Room was gonna get a chance to go on the wall.
And I do think that, like, from a serious critical perspective, that The Room is a very fascinating look into male feelings.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
the way in which, like, and I mean, so many movies are about that, but there's something so raw about the specific things that Tommy Wiseau is emotional about, and the things that Johnny is upset about, and kind of like, it's definitely for better or for worse, like that. This is him, like on the screen,
Laid bare before
yeah,
us.
and I think that that's really, that's a brave thing to do.
Watching it, it is kind of like an impression of a movie.
Yeah,
It's a guy who's like, here's how all men behave in movie.
yeah.
Men are in movie like this. Men get so mad at whatever,
Yeah.
it's so
The football, the suit,
Right.
you're
The
tearing
suits.
me apart. Like, it's-
killing himself at the end is
Well,
like
you're tearing me
like
up- yeah.
now it's art.
It feels like an alien came to Earth,
Yes.
spent a week looking at movies, and was like, "Oh, I can do one of those."
I
And
could,
then
I could spend like an
shows what
hour
you-
on Lisa alone. Like, she's so fascinating.
I think you could make the argument that like the best creative influences come from the
I like that the really weird idea peoples get to go out and have the really weird ideas.
Yeah.
I think that there's everything great with that.
I think fundamentally, The Room is one of the most important movies of the 21st century.
Yes.
And I think we
It
should put
turned
it.
20 this year.
It did. And I think we should put it on the wall.
Happy anniversary.
You are my rose. Okay, and that ends this episode of Staff Picks with our winner, The Room. I feel really proud of this. I think that we did a great job. Thank y'all for joining us once again, and we will see you on Staff Picks next week.
But there's also a movie that he made called Red Hook Summer where Nola Darling shows up again. And the way that he like ends her story is kind of ridiculous. She becomes a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, I haven't seen Red Hook Summer.
In Red
I
Hook
didn't know
Summer,
this.
she's a Jehovah's Witness. His argument for this is that the women who were like sexually open in the 80s, like especially like the ones that were hanging out with Prince and like Donna Summer and all
Okay.
of those people, they were just like, they became very religious later in life. So his ending for Nola Darling is to
Okay.
make her be a Jehovah's Witness.
There's like a difference between the life that Nola had and the life that Vanity had.
I was just like, you're his brain.